Hearing none, I will declare that motion passes. The next agenda item is public comment. Do we have anyone either here or online that would want to offer public comment at this time? I know the format is a bit awkward for that, but if you are there monitoring us from the public, we would appreciate anything you want to share at this time. Has anyone signed up previously? No, sir. Okay, I will take the silence as meaning there's no one that cares to speak at this time. The next agenda item is perspectives on the upcoming General Assembly session. Delegate Cole, do you have anything? What's your thought on that? It's going to be scary, I believe.
I am certainly looking forward to it. Again, this will be my third session, and I'm excited to get to work. And I'll be carrying the legislation for designating the Rappahannock River for the scenic river designation. I think it's about 79 miles stretch that we're going to carry there. So working real closely.
Okay, well that's always good. That will be good. You know, scenic river designations used to be just simple. You know, we decide that that's what we're going to do, but now it can be controversial. So when you get that from the Senate Action Committee, we'll probably talk about that. Anyone, any of the delegates that are out online or senators or representative senators, I would say before we go any further that I don't know that it will be scary, but it's just like the meeting we're having here today. It will be a little bit awkward to conduct business. There are some that are pushing to limit the session to 30 days. I don't know whether I expect we'll end up staying there as long as we need to get the job done. And that's probably what we should be agreeing to up front. And if we can do it in 30 days, that's fine. If it takes longer, I guess that'll be fine too. If it doesn't take us 30 days, I'm all for going home after 14 days so we can take care of business. The one thing that's been done, which I think is a good thing given the circumstance that we've been in special session for about 3 months, from August 18th through the middle of October, is that we are going to limit in each body the numbers or pieces of legislation that the members can introduce. And I don't think that should be a problem because we've already been introducing things in special session. But I think the delegates correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they're already restricted to 7 bills, and they're going to meet virtually. At least that's the plan this time, totally virtually. The Senate is limiting in total to 12 bills per member, with 8 of them needing to be pre-filed bills that we would have had to request by Monday of this week, and then 4 additional bills, for a total of 12 bills that we will be allowed to introduce. And again, our procedure will be planning at this point to be somewhat of a hybrid in that we will have committee meetings that are virtual, but that we will be for sessions. Our plan is to be again at the Science Center in Richmond. That's that. Any of the members out online there that would want to share anything at this point as far as your observation or any particular legislation that you want to share with us at this time?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, this is Keith. How are you?
Fine. How you doing, Keith?
We're doing okay. I was a little late coming in. I have to leave a little bit early too. Y'all look a little lonely.
Fairgrounds is lonely when there's not livestock around.
Yeah. We I do have a couple of things right off the top of my head, and I'll probably have a few more. It's been a little bit of a challenge this year with only 7 bills, picking and choosing. You know, I had 16 last year. So one, we're looking at flooded septic systems, which are a major problem. When you look just down here in Gloucester County, you have 600 systems that are just flooded on sunny day flooding. So it's not only it could be potential environmental crisis that we're looking at. One thing, we're looking at a pilot program to elevate those systems up in the air. So we've actually been working with the company over the last year to bring down the price and to work on the technology to get these systems out of the ground, up in the air, and out of harm's way, and give folks the ability to fix those, especially those that are in the RPA where they're very challenged to do that. And this pilot program is we're looking at using public access authority lands to be able to do that and do some things different as far as possibly with the regulations and with the statutes to give them a little bit of leeway. So that's one thing we're looking at. The other is a sub-loan fund, create a sub-loan fund for stormwater best management practices. Those two off the top of my head. We may have a couple of others, but those are the two that come to mind right away.
Okay. Thank you, Don.
Yes, sir.
Members out online there, that we want to share anything at this time. Okay. All right, hearing none, if, something comes to mind later, obviously, I don't think any of y'all are bashful, so be sure to, call on us to let you have your say. Our next agenda item is the, Warsaw Business District Revitalization and Stormwater Improvement Project. And, Joe Quisenberry, the town manager, is going to, share that with us. Elton, are you going to coordinate that for us?
Yes, we've got the slide deck that's going to, it should be up now, and Joseph, you can take it away.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you all for having me. I'll try to be brief and answer any questions that you may have. So I guess the beginning of us with our revitalization efforts, we sort of knew that it had to deal with not just economic factors, but it also dealt with our water quality, stormwater, runoff. So our downtown during major rain events would, begin to flood. And for those that don't know where Warsaw is, we're just a hop and a skip from the Rappahannock River. And, so we knew we had to do something because it's really an impediment to our growth and revitalization. So we decided to sort of combine stormwater and environmental practices with economic development. And I think the results have been pretty astounding. So if you could go to the next slide for me. So as you can see, back in 2016, this was our downtown. And, I think it's objectively needed some improvement. I really think it was almost seemed to be a lost cause. So if you look through here, our vacancy rates were, probably around 75%. We barely had anything there on our main street. As you can look down along the sidewalks, we had no drop inlets. So we had nowhere for stormwater to go. We had no businesses. And so it was just really, it felt like almost a lost cause. It was almost that obligatory. You had to drive through Warsaw to get to the Northern Neck. And we wanted people to stop and stay. And, we wanted to make it a town that has a great quality of life for everyone. So if you go to the next slide for me. We decided to do something about it. So we started off, this is a vacant shopping center that was adjacent to downtown. And town council identified that we had to do something with this. Now, this property had several bondholders that went throughout 40, 50 years. So a lot of those had passed away and it was now with their children. We couldn't get in touch with them. And at one point, the asking price was around $2 million for this property. And as you can see, that was, we knew that wasn't acceptable. So we worked with our attorneys and acquired it through the court system, through eminent domain. And we were able to purchase it for $400,000. And it's 11.5 acres. And it was sort of the bottom part of the town. I mean, it was the low point. So we thought, let's put in a stormwater practice, create a really beautiful park down there, and alleviate stormwater on our main street. And while we're doing that, we also, decided, let's revitalize our downtown. Let's try to do all this at one time and get it all done the right way. So since we are a small town, around 1,800 people, we knew we didn't have the capital for that. So we applied through DHCD and received $1 million downtown revitalization grant. 700,000 of that was for business revitalization. 300,000 was for stormwater management. Then for this location you're seeing right before you, we applied for a stormwater local assistance fund grant and received 618,000. And then we applied to National Fish and Wildlife and received 200,000. The total project cost for this pond was 800,000, and we received 818 in grant funds. So we were very pleased with the results of our applications, and had hopes that this could come to fruition. If you go to the next slide for me. So we did a community needs assessment. What did people want to see in Warsaw? And, you know, number one was to revitalize downtown. I mean, that was just a very obvious choice. Number two, we had a lot of stormwater flooding issues. So that was another thing that residents wanted to see, and so did town council and staff. And then lastly, provide green space. We do have a really great town park and dog park in town, but when it comes to like a large scale green space, we really don't have that. And so we thought, again, let's combine our stormwater practices and environmental practices with a more, I guess, tangible approach for our residents, and to create a recreational asset as well. And so that's sort of what we try to develop throughout this process. You can go to the next slide for me. So again, we did receive, and I left out a couple of those. We also received a $1.4 million VDOT TAP grant that is assisting us with putting new sidewalks all throughout town to make our downtown and this new green space connect to one another. We did receive a $50,000 Agriculture and Forestry Industries Development Fund grant. That's for a new brewery that we have. And as of last week, we actually received almost $500,000 from DHCD through the state for our Industrial Revitalization Fund that will help to redevelop our downtown even further. And as you can see, Senator McDougall's in that picture with us, and he's been a cheerleader and champion and written letters and helped us throughout all this.
Hey, did you get my good side in there?
What's that?
Did you get my good side in the picture?
I think we did. I think we did. So
I didn't know I had one, so I'm happy to know that did occur.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you for your work. You really helped us with getting the cogs and gears turning at the state level to help us out. So we appreciate that. If you go to the next slide for me. So now the photos to the right are sort of what you see with our downtown. We're currently at about 90% occupancy rate downtown. And that's even with COVID. We are announcing new businesses every few months. We have right now, Ace Hardware is about to open on Main Street. We have a new donut, breakfast, ice cream shop opening on Main Street. We have a new factory that's announcing 45 full-time jobs. So we're still continuing to grow and grow. And we were really amazed that working in tandem with addressing stormwater and environmental impacts along with economic development really work so well together. And I think that's what we hope. And we're trying to get that message out there to other small towns and even bigger localities that they really work well together. You can go to the next slide for me. So for the shopping center, goodbye, shopping center, hello, green space. So we're still we're working on it. As you can see in that photo, we have some erosion issues going on, but we have this beautiful green space in the middle of town. We're putting in walking trails. We are going to apply for some USDA funds to put in a farmer's market amphitheater. We are going to connect those trails we have a community college in town. We're going to connect all those together. So with just this one site, we're going to provide stormwater management, green space, farmer's market, amphitheater, all within just this one site. And they all came together so perfectly that we were sort of, again, blown away by the results of it. You go to the next slide for me. So key takeaways from this, these are lessons learned on our end. Partnerships are key. we have a staff, administrative staff of 3, myself, our treasurer and clerk, our community development specialist, and that's really all we had. So we knew we had to reach out and ask for help. And honestly, the Planning District Commission, our legislators, our all of our nonprofits, our Main Street program, our Chamber of Commerce, all came together, and we've all worked together to make this happen. And we literally couldn't have done anything without their assistance. Next up, small towns can accomplish big things. I mean, right now, within 4 years, we're knocking on $5 to $6 million worth of grant funds for our 3 square miles and 1,800 residents. If you try and you don't succeed the first time, we tried last year to apply for the $500,000 Industrial Revitalization Fund grant. We didn't receive it. We didn't let that dissuade us from trying again. We tried again, and we were one of 3 out of 12 across the state that received funds. So it doesn't matter what size your locality is, keep trying, keep pushing, and you will get there. Grant funding is available and can be leveraged. And that's what we really did. We've had minimal capital expenditures from our coffers here at the town because we're able to leverage these grants against one another. So if one grant requires a 20% in-kind match, you can use another grant to satisfy that requirement. And so we just had that multiplier effect of we kept doing that with all these other grants to where, we've had millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of development, and we've maybe expended less than $250,000 out of our own pocket. And so we're very fortunate to be able to do that. And then lastly is maybe not even think big, but think outside of the box. I think professionals in our positions, we understand you always, economic development's of paramount importance, but if you try to, incorporate that green infrastructure element in there, it takes a little more time, it takes a little more money, but a cost benefit analysis, the benefits far surpass the cost and the labor that you put into it. And so far over the 4 years, that's sort of what we've learned, and we continue to learn every day. But with that being said, if you have any questions, if anyone has anything, feel free to ask.
Okay, Joseph, thank you so much for that presentation. Are there questions around the table here or online participants?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Billy?
Mr. Chairman, it's Billy Withers. I don't have a question, but I would like to make a comment. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Quisenberry. My wife and I own property in Northern Neck for many years. We left there around 2012, 13, and I'm really happy to see the improvements to your town, Mr. Quisenberry. A great job, and I look forward to getting back to visit you. One of the reasons you lost a lot of business was my wife moved back to Fredericksburg, so she quit spending money in your town.
Just get a vacation home or something. That we would appreciate that.
But seriously, congratulations on your good work. It really looks nice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Yeah, I'm hoping, if all goes well over the next several months, that when we have our spring meeting, we'll be able to get down in that area and maybe before. I always like to go down through there, but I'd love to see that project in person. Okay, other questions or comments?
I have one thing.
Yes, Nancy?
Do you have a grant writer, or did you do all the grant writing yourself?
We did them ourselves. We worked with the Planning District Commission, and so we applied for some, they applied for some, we worked together on some. So it really was sort of an in-house effort, and we're not grant writing extraordinaires, but we just kept being persistent and asking for help and asking folks, what do we need to put in this application? And guess the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So we just kept that up and tried our best.
Determination is important. What other question? Are you related to Travis Quisenberry?
I always get asked this stuff. I'm from Patrick Floyd counties. So I don't know a lot of my Questenberry kinfolk, but there are a lot of us out there, but I don't know many of them. But yeah, I wish I knew, but I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
All
Uh,
right. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is Keir Whitson, Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors. First of all, congratulations. It's incredible what you've done to turn your town around. I've driven through there. It looks great. My question is, what, following the securing of the grant money, what, if any, direct action did you take to attract the businesses that are now bringing your occupancy rates to such a high level? Or was it really a passive process where you created a more inviting space and then business just naturally followed?
that's a great question. We did have to do a little bit of both. So we made these investments into our downtown, and we also provided, and not to toot our horn, but we won the 2019 VML Economic Development Innovation Award. We provided a program where town council subsidized up to $600 worth of rent per month for any new business locating within town. And in the first year, we had about 8 new businesses. So yeah, it costs us money, but when we looked at it, a few of those were our meals tax. So we easily collected more than we assisted with. And when you look at the effects of, the jobs that were created, the capital investment, the tax revenue collected, that small amount of money, you're looking at $7,200 a year, absolutely knock that out of the park. So we started that program, and that really drove, we had businesses clamoring to come here, whereas we used to have to pull teeth to get them to come here. So that was a big deal. And we always utilize our state funds, the enterprise zone and those types of measures, but we did create a few economic incentives as well.
Thanks a lot. That's a great answer. And I figured there must have been some incentives embedded in there somewhere. So it sounds like it worked out very well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Okay, well, thank you again for that presentation and for sharing that excellent project.
Thank you.
You bet. Our next item is an update on the Upper Rappahannock Watershed Plan. Michelle, are you out there?
Yes, I am. Hold on. I am sharing my screen.
Okay.
So I'm hoping you can all see that. Great. So this is a project that started about a year ago, but it really started during the WIP 3 process with some issues that we found collectively with our stakeholders through that process. And it's made possible through a contract that all the PDCs share with the Department of Environmental Quality to implement the WIP 3 process. And the effort, while it focuses on the Upper Rappahannock watershed, we are providing this data to the full extent of our PDC jurisdiction. So for example, Fauquier County will have data for their entire county, not just the Rappahannock watershed. So it would be more functional for their communities. But you can see, just to refresh your memories, which county our PDC covers is Fauquier, Rappahannock, Culpeper, Madison, and Orange. So the issues that we identified collectively with our stakeholders through the WIP 3 process was lack of comprehensive GIS data to spatially plan BMP implementation. So essentially, there was not existing data that people could determine where BMPs should go on the landscape. Our stakeholders, such as local governments or nonprofits like Piedmont Environmental Council, were planning BMPs according to who wanted a BMP where on their land. It wasn't an effort as to, okay, this is where we need to put BMPs on the landscape, but who was asking for cost share dollars or who was asking for projects. So there wasn't so much planning going on. Being a PDC, we have an interest in trying to put our most bang for our buck and plan. So the other issue that was raised was that data was scattered among various organizations. So no one organization had all the data. So we are trying to essentially build a clearinghouse for our stakeholders as a one-stop shop where they can access the data. So as we plan collectively, whether it be our PDC's Land Use and Environment Committee or any organization, they'll be able to overlay all these sets in order to make better decisions. So they will be able to see the full picture for the region. Also, we noted that there were data gaps in the BMP data sets. So some localities did not have a good handle on where their stormwater BMPs were or have full data for those best management practices. So the goal is to try to work with our local governments in order to complete out that data set and also to digitize it within, to be able to visually see where those BMPs are. So phase one of the project is essentially doing that. So gathering existing data from our partners and mapping that data where possible. So several of our localities and nonprofits that have the data sets that we were interested in did not have it often in GIS. It was just in an Excel spreadsheet, for example, and our PDC went through and put it into GIS so it could be seen visually where these best management practices and other data sets are on the landscape. We also, in many cases, had to negotiate data sharing agreements with those organizations and in order for us to be able to access that data and for us to be able to share it with our stakeholders. And I should also point out at this time that the goal with this is not for this data to be made public. It is just to be shared with our conservation partners. So with the local governments within our region, with the nonprofit conservation partners within our region, so we can make better land use, so we can make better decisions about implementing the WIP3. And these are the data sets that we have collected for this effort. And which data sets we collected was determined by our stakeholder committee. And our land use and environment committee is again made up of local governments, state government agencies, and nonprofit organizations. So some of the data sets we collected were just base layers like parcel data, building footprints, sewer service areas, zoning data, population projections, and land cover data sets. And then we also went into looking at things like what land has been preserved, whether by conservation easements or where there is recreation sites and river access. We also collected data from USGS on soils data, rivers and streams and watershed floodplain data, where there are impaired streams and permitted point source discharges from EPA. And then things got a little more difficult when we started looking to get the best management practice data. So we've worked with our local governments to collect stormwater BMP data. For the most part, we have been successful in doing that. Some of our smaller localities, those data sets are incomplete. The septic best management practice data, Virginia Department of Health has been wonderful to work with to get us those data sets. However, the Department of Forestry's tree planting and forest best management practice data that data we're not able to get because of their agreement with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, their federal agreement with NRCS, and also for the DCR agricultural sector best management practices. So DCR is willing to give us that data for a section of the region at a time, not for point data. So essentially, I think it was HUC 16, if you're familiar with what that means, but essentially by sub-watershed for the region, but not point data, again, because of their agreement with NRCS. We also have successfully collected data on wetland mitigation banks, nutrient credit banks, riparian buffers, and then some stream data on coal monitoring and water chemistry and stream flow, endangered species data from DCR, and data on trout streams and fish passages. So, for example, this is the type of data that we would be looking at that our localities and other partners would be able to see in their GIS. This shows where the best stormwater best management practices are within the region. And when they would click on those dots, it would give them the data on those stormwater best management practices, what they are, and some information, some data about them. And it also in red the impaired streams, the DEQ impaired streams within the region. So that's just one example of some of the data sets that you might be able to see. So the next phase of this project is being partially through a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation small watershed grant. It's a 2-year project that we're going to begin in January. And that grant is a $300,000 grant that will also fund some stormwater BMPs in Fauquier County and some work with John Marshall Soil and Water Conservation District's VCAP program. So roughly a third of the grant will go towards this phase 2 effort. So firstly, we will be contracting the Chesapeake Conservancy to take some of the work that they've already done on their new land cover data and stream hydrography data that they've done for the EPA Chesapeake Bay program through those mapping efforts, and use some of the data we've collected through our process on stormwater BMPs to develop a custom GIS-based prioritization of urban and agricultural BMPs for the region. So they have done this as a pilot project in Pennsylvania. I believe it was Lancaster County, only for agricultural BMPs. So this will be the first time they will be able to do this for urban best management practices as well. So this will help both us for planning on a regional level for localities and even on a site-by-site basis to be able to determine what BMPs would work best on any given landscape. So it's a wonderful decision-making tool, and they'll make it available as a web-based platform for our partners. And to supplement that, we'll be contracting the Friends of the Rappahannock to ground truth the stream bank data that the Chesapeake Conservancy has collected, and also to conduct targeted water quality monitoring to better inform the watershed plan. And they will also be working to digitize the region's existing livestock exclusion fencing data, because right now we do not have a good handle on where that is within the landscape. And that is all I have. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Questions? Around the table here or out there online?
Mr. Chairman, this is Keith.
Yes, Keith?
I do have a question. Go back to, you made a comment that data will be available to, I guess, local governments and certain NGO partners, the NGOs, or
Yes.
and
So it will be available to the DCR data is only available to people that have shared the MOUs, so the agricultural BMP data, even at the level that DCR is willing to share it. It's only available to people who have signed on to the MOU. The rest of the data, we did not have those restrictions from the who provided it. So any organization, any of our conservation partners, not just the general public, because this is intended for BMP implementation.
okay. So you have certain BMP partners you're saying, or I'm just wondering, what are the qualifications and who would those folks be? I mean, I'm just curious.
I mean, essentially, if an organization came to us and they had a legitimate use for the data, we would allow them to have access to the data. But we have a land use and environment committee. It's an open committee. It's restricted who comes to the committee, but generally speaking, any organization that is on our land use and environment committee would have access to the data. So we're not making a judgment call as to who can or cannot have the general data, but it's an organization, not an individual person.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions for Michelle? Yes, I see a hand there.
Yeah, John Bateman with the Northern Neck Planning District Commission. Michelle, are you working with your Soil and Water Conservation District kind of one-on-one with this?
They are on our committee, but we are not working with them one-on-one. In order to access the Ag BMP data at all, we had to go through DCR central office.
Thank you.
Question. You mentioned funding for urban DMP in Pennsylvania, or the Chesapeake Bay Commission, as you said, as well. A number of years ago, I introduced a resolution calling for the development of urban DMPs, talking to Jack Fry, who many would recognize as really an institution, DCR. He said there was no such thing, but actually, we have been in the process, I guess, of developing that, but I think for a long time, because I represented a heavily intensive agriculture part of the state, and I'm fairly protective of farming in general, but we basically pointed our efforts a lot of times in agriculture use, rural use, not because they were the biggest offender, but because it was so expensive to fix the urban issues. And so I'm pleased to see some of the progress that's being made in this presentation and one before, more so, for undertaking these projects.
Yes, thank you. This effort is definitely for both urban and ag BMP. So we're not pointing fingers from one to the other. Hopefully it's a joint effort.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you, Michelle. It's always good to hear an update from the work of the group.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on then to a discussion of potential climate change training in Virginia. Elizabeth Andrews had the opportunity to work with in Richmond while she was there, working on a lot of environmental issues and law. And now she's at William & Mary as the director of the Virginia Coastal Policy Center. And Elizabeth, you there?
I am here. Thank you, Senator Hanger. It's good to see you. Well, kind of see you.
Yeah, I'm glad to see you too. Now that you're moving a bit, I can tell which one's you there. Yeah.
So hopefully you all can hear me. And
Elizabeth, you should be able to share your screen now.
great. I will do that now. I really appreciate you all having me here today. And actually, I'll tell you first how this transpired, which is that last fall, we held our annual conference, and Senator Hanger can attest to the fact that we normally have an annual conference every year. But this year, due to the pandemic, we had 3 webinars online instead, and he was gracious enough to come and speak at our October webinar. But when we, back in what seemed like years ago, when we were able to get together in person, we had a conference last fall that was called the 3P of resilience, planning and partnerships, and paying for it all. And we had speakers come from various coastal states to talk about their plans for resilience. And we also talked about partnerships with the business community and funding. The paying for it all prong of it was funding opportunities. So someone came and spoke from the Maryland Department of Transportation. And can you see my screen, I hope?
Yes.
Great, thank you. She mentioned in passing something called the Maryland Climate Change Academy or Climate Academy. And she caught the ear of a couple people that were in attendance. The Coastal Zone Management Program, Shep Moon, whom many of you all know, came to see me afterwards and said, that sounded really interesting. I think we should look into doing something like that for Virginia. And so Joe Maroon, whom many of you all may recall, when he was director of the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and now he's in charge of the Virginia Environmental Endowment, also and said the same thing because he was there and said, I would love to see us check into that and see if there's something like that we could look at for Virginia. Would it be appropriate? Would it be possible? So VE gave us a small grant to go out and try to get some input and do some research on the topic. I have spoken to the Coastal PDC meeting, so I apologize ahead of time to John Bateman and to Denise and to whomever else was at that meeting, because you're going to hear this twice. And also Eldon was kind enough to send out a poll to the APA membership to ask them, and I'm going to give you all the, first I'll put the link to the poll in the chat box. I wanted to share a couple slides with you to show you the kinds of programs that we've found out there first, so you can see the types of training we're talking about. As I mentioned, it was originally the Maryland Department of Transportation representative who talked about the Climate Leadership Academy to train and to certify local government officials and private sector and nonprofit representatives of climate change and impacts on communities. And so the question is, would that a similar program to that be beneficial and viable in Virginia? The Maryland Climate Leadership Academy, I will note, it's a state-funded program. They paid to bring it there. I don't know the exact amount that they pay Maryland Department of Natural Resources, but they paid to bring in the Association of Climate Change Officers, ACO, to do it. And the result is, they have different tiers, but the result of the certification tier is you get certified with ACO credits. I think that this group did come and speak to some people in Virginia. They weren't sure that, frankly, paying a bit of money to get those credits was perhaps the way to go, since those credits aren't recognized by other organizations. So, but that is one. So by the state paying for it, the attendance was free for the attendees. And the target audience is state and local government leaders, industry representatives, business leaders, infrastructure organizations, but you have to be a Maryland resident or employed in Maryland. And there are 4 levels of training. You can do an online toolkit, which is very appropriate for this pandemic time that we're in. Primer workshops, short certificate programs, and a deep dive, a 6 to 9 month training option. So various different possibilities. And that's one option you can look at for Virginia. Another is Washington State. They have a coastal training program that is, again, it's state sponsored, but it's administered by a nonprofit organization. And specifically in this case for shoreline management professionals. So it's a very targeted audience. And that charge, even though it's state sponsored, they do charge a fee of $205 per course. And it's 3 different courses offered with a focus on science and law and policy. You can get approved as continuing education credits for several professional organizations, but there's not a certification per se offered. And that's funded by NOAA. The World Bank actually has a city climate planner certificate program. It's an international program to train local and city governments on climate conscious city planning. And that's got a steeper fee associated with it. It is $650 per attendee. And the target population, again, city and local government officials, especially city planners. And they do ask that you have a degree beyond high school or 5 years of on-the-job work experience. Requires completion of in-person training and online webinars and a certificate exam. And you get the Climate Planner Urban Greenhouse Gas Inventory Specialist certification with others developed. So as you can see, there are a variety of different approaches to how you can do this. Another one is through a nonprofit, the Climate Reality Leadership Corps, and that is a program aimed at creating and training community members in climate change activism. And that's held around the world for free, funded by the Climate Reality Project donations and fundraising. And that's a 3-day in-person training, and they have to do 10 acts of leadership. So it's a very different target audience. It's aimed at the community members, the citizens. EPA has a climate change adaptation training that it offers, federally funded webinars to educate about climate change, and they are free, targeted at EPA staff, local government officials, non-governmental organization leaders. 3 webinars, short, 30 to 60 minutes each. I think we're all finding that these hours and hours long webinars are kind of tough to handle, so they keep them short. But it's funded by the EPA, but there is no certification as a result. And then final example, the Department of Environmental Quality here in Virginia has been doing in climate change training for all of their employees. They just started that this year. And they have a series of webinars on a variety of topics that post duty. I just admitted someone, Eldon. They have an in-house series of webinars on various topics. They bring in specialists. They've done urban heat, and they hosted VIMS, Virginia Institute of Marine Science, to talk about their tools. They have covered a variety of different topics. Admiral Phillips to talk about the state's new coastal resilience master plan that's been developed, environmental justice, etc. Even though it's only for DEQ staff, the topics covered could provide a framework for possible expansion to other state agencies, to local government staff, to whatever is the appropriate audience. And I'm going to stop sharing and pull up, so I'll put in the chat, the link to a poll that I would really appreciate it if you could take the time and take it. You could either do that now, or you could do it later if you have time. This is what you will see when you pull it up. And you can't obviously fill it out on the screen with me right now, unfortunately, but you can go to this link yourself and do it. But I just want to show you, it's going to ask you, which sector represents your place of employment? Would some form of training be helpful in Virginia on climate change topics? If yes, what should be the target audiences? And I will note that for those who I did present this as well at the Coastal Zone Management Program partner team meeting. And if you did it there, you may want to go ahead and do it again, because their format didn't, in GoToWebinar, I think it was, you couldn't write in anything, whereas here you can write in if you have ideas. Who should organize and hold the climate change training? Should it be a partnership between multiple types of organizations? Should it be one sector, state government agencies, universities, nonprofits? And then I'm asking you, if you did say partnership, who do you have in mind? And to rank the amount of time that we should dedicate to that, if we do that in Virginia, multiple day, condensed, what's better, you think, to get the most attendance? And the preferred delivery method, of course, right now, in person is, but we're hoping that will change next year. And here's a big important one. Should there be a fee? And if you say yes, but scholarship, or no, please tell me how you think we should fund it. Should that come from appropriation from the state? Should it come from donations? What should it come from? Or certain organizations funding it, whatever. And then what topics should be covered? Should it be a one-time or should there be a longer term or recurring element updates? And if so, should that be through a listserv, or an annual conference or a webinar? And then if you're willing to contribute funding towards it, and any additional comments or questions. So as you can see, it's not that long, but your input would be very helpful, particularly because there's an array of sectors represented here today. So thank you for your time. I do hope you'll fill out the poll. Please do. And do you have any questions for me?
Okay, we'll entertain questions. Now, Elvin, would you be able to,
I just sent the members that are in this room a link to the poll.
okay, yeah, if we can facilitate, Elizabeth, we'll follow up on that with Eldon so that we all have access to that poll. But
Thank you.
Participating virtually might have been better able to see that when you set down. Those of us actually here, it's a little difficult to see. So
Right.
We'll get that link and
Thank you.
try to participate in that poll.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Questions for Elizabeth?
And let me add quickly that I should say that when we get all of these different survey results together, so as I mentioned, I've talked to the Coastal Planning District Commissions, the Coastal Zone Management Program, Network Partners. The APA was kind enough to send out the poll to the APA membership. And then you all today, I would like to figure out a targeted way to talk to chambers of commerce to get the business sector input. I think that's key. And we don't hear from the private sector as much as we should when we're talking about resilience issues. It's often government and academia and nonprofits, but we need to hear from the private sector as well. And then we'll be compiling all of that into a report for the Virginia Environmental Endowment, since they provided the grant funds to do that.
Okay, are there other questions or comments from anyone?
I hope they're all busy taking the poll. That's why they can't ask me questions.
Maybe definitely we'll follow up on that. Listen, we might need some climate change training. What if we were to meet that? You know, we might have to, when we're down in the northern neck, maybe we can slip on down to Weaversburg and we can train. Is that something you can do?
Absolutely. Happy to.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, this is Woody Henson. Before we leave this subject,
I saw you up on the screen.
all right. I think it's a good point to bring up. As we know, I'm a farmer and my farm is at Leechtown and my farm is 12 feet above sea level and it's perfectly flat. But we've been having unusual rainstorms that I don't have to tell you all about since the last week of July. And we're getting 3 and 4 inch rains we can handle, but we had a 6 inch rain one night and we had a 7 inch rain this past weekend. And I'm getting these flood channels going to the river. In other words, the fields can't absorb the water as fast as it's coming down. And even though I have BMPs in place and good filter strips, I'm getting washouts on the riverbank. They're like 30 feet long and 8 to 10 feet deep and 10 feet wide. And so I can take a farm tractor and a blade. It's not the big projects that we've done before, but I'm trying to think of a way, as we're talking about climate change, there has to be some kind of system for helping farmers with on the Rappahannock River with, I'm not the only farmer this is happening to, and it's not big money, but it's, anyway, I'll be quiet at this point and let you all ask me questions.
Okay. Is that something you want to respond to, Elizabeth?
Thank you. I was just wondering if I was allowed to or not, because that's a perfect explanation. That's exactly right, that it's not just sea level rise that people are worried about, right? It's also this increasing storm severity and frequency is something that really is hard for a farmer or any landowner to plan for. So that needs to be part of our focus. What do we do to help farmers to deal with this sudden deluge event that washes out the soil? That BMPs need to target that as well as regular rainfall amounts. The city of Norfolk, when they came up with their new zoning ordinance, they wanted to see, they all knew that there had been an increase in precipitation, but they didn't know how much. So they went to the Norfolk airport and they got the precipitation data from the past 70 years and found that there hadn't been an increase. So it was not anyone's imagination. So it's something that the Commonwealth really needs to address, is how we're going to deal with the increased rainfall from these sudden events.
Thank you very much. And the reason I brought it up, Mr. Chairman, is when I was a little boy, which was a long time ago, we had 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch thunderstorms in the summertime. And now we go 3 or 4 weeks with no rain, but when we get a rain now, and I can't tell you why, I'm not an expert on climate, but we're getting 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 inch rains, and we can't handle it. And there has to be a system. The last big rain we had, by the time I did fill dirt and rocks and burlap and everything to do the bank, it was $14,000 cost. This time it's probably only going to be $2,000 or $3,000, but it's a matter that it's a continued thing, and farmers don't make that much money. So we need to figure out a way we can. There's a whole lot of woodland and a whole lot of agriculture land that border rivers, not just the Rappahannock, but rivers and streams. And we've got to slow down this runoff. Thank you.
You bet. Other questions? Okay, seeing and hearing none, Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time today, participating. Look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presenter, actually Neil Terry with the Department of Forestry, update on the Sentinel Landscapes Partnership. Terry?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, members of the commission. Do you want me just to stay here? That works good?
Can y'all hear him out there in computer land?
All right, so I've got a couple of updates since our last meeting. We've gotten some information back from the Department of Defense and the Sentinel Landscapes program that in fact the RFPs are going to be announced in January of 2021. So we are on schedule and on target with what we are attempting to do. Some new changes as well are that there's going to be a pre-application phase. This is something that was not permitted in years past. So we're looking forward to having a pre-application. Those will be due about mid to late January with an anticipated turnaround time of about a couple of weeks, 5-6 weeks. So somewhere around the middle of February, end of February, we should, if we are being asked to provide a full proposal, we will do that. We'll turn that proposal around and we should hear whether or not we are finally awarded a Sentinel Landscape designation here in Virginia by May. Another additional and welcome change is that each of the landscapes that are designated have a position that will be funded through the program up to 3 years, which is nice because we thought we were going to have to shoulder that by ourselves, but we will have hopefully at least one who will be asking for 2 positions here in the Commonwealth to assist with some of the partnership and alignment and implementation of the program. Things that make Sentinel Landscapes in Virginia and our Virginia Security Corridor unique compared to the other 7 existing applications or designations that exist, and that we feel like are going to make our application much stronger than what we anticipate will be the competition, are that we're looking at 2 different approaches here in Virginia. We're going to have a land approach and a water approach, something that other designations have not addressed. We're going to be looking at basically resilience, climate change, sea level rise in our coastal communities around the Navy facilities as well as the Coast Guard. When we look at the land side, we're going to be looking more at encroachment, dark skies, working lands, working forests, working at lands, those kinds of things. So we have a kind of a double-sided approach which makes us unique and better positions us. We're also looking at being the first state that would be able to link two existing neighboring designations, really creating a full, true landscape style, large type approach where we would link the middle Chesapeake Sentinel landscape in Maryland with North Carolina. So we would be able to look at this as a multi-state benefit for the Department of Defense. The other third would be that we involve every branch of service. Most do not currently, as they are positioned now that they, depending on where their installation is, they may only involve the Marine Corps, they may only involve the Army, but our approach involves all branches to include the Coast Guard. So we think we've got a significant leg up on the competition. We will see. Things that we have done since our last meeting, we had our second meeting of our state level coordinating committee, where we pulled together members of the installations, both their commanders as well as their natural resources folks, and a few select members of different federal installations, as well as federal agencies, to mirror what the federal coordinating committee looks like. So we pulled those folks together at a meeting and gave them specific marching orders so that we can now start talking about exactly what our goals are going to be in a very specific way for the pre-application phase in January. We also presented at the Virginia Military Advisory Council in Richmond back on the 19th, where we addressed all of the different commanders and basically said, we need your support to make sure that your folks are aware and that they are working and cooperating and collaborating with us in this process. That went over very well, and now we're just kind of waiting for information to come back from the anchor installations that we have identified sometime, I think around the 9th of December, and what we'll do is then put together our rough draft. So the draft I hope to have done sometime over the holidays, and I get a lot of questions of why does the state care? Why are we working on Sentinel landscapes? Why are we engaging the Department of Defense? And quite honestly, it's pretty simple. The Department of Defense owns 135,000 acres of land. They're one of the larger landholders in the Commonwealth. Primarily, all of that is east of 95. It's where our population is. It's where our growth pressures are the greatest. It's $104 billion in economic impact to the Commonwealth of Virginia. It employs 885,000 different individuals. We want the military to be here. We want to have safe, secure borders. We want to have well-trained individuals. We want to have great mission success. And we also understand that that doesn't happen if we don't have working lands and forests around those installations as well. So the answers to us are pretty simple. We do look at the impacts, we do look at the partnerships, and it's time for us to collaborate on a much more direct and purposeful level. So we are very excited about this opportunity. We do hope that January will bring us a request for a full proposal that we will then provide in February or March. So if there's any questions, I'll open the floor now.
Okay, are there questions? Did I hear you correctly? Are y'all gonna have a budget request for 2 additional positions? Is that?
Yeah, so what we've done is, so the program this year is going to award each successful designation. And the Department of Defense has not said exactly how many designations they're going to grant this year. It depends on the size, it depends on the scope of what they're trying to accomplish. But they do plan on awarding at least 1 position per designation, because we're going to go for a land and a water type of approach here in Virginia. We're going to ask for 2, one that will specialize in coastal concerns and one that will specialize on approaching. So we're going to be looking for 2. Each of those will be funded for approximately 3 years.
How they be funded?
They will be funded for 3 years.
Oh, okay. Is it just a grant program or you?
It will be through the Sentinel Landscapes program.
Okay, I got you. Okay. Maybe y'all have a budget request for that.
Nope.
Okay.
No, sir.
Well, that's even better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we thought.
I do know you mentioned the Department of Defense and all the property. As I mentioned earlier, I participate also with the Chesapeake Bay Commission. And the current commander of the North Atlantic Fleet, Admiral Rock, is on the commission. He's been very cooperative, if you will, and they have a liaison person. And y'all work with that them? Or
Is that, Colonel Carey, Susan Carey, is that?
no, for the Navy, it's Admiral Rock.
Okay.
And he had a staff person that was doing the work named Sarah. I can't remember Sarah's last name. But they were, at any rate, I can provide you that information if y'all have not made that connection.
Yeah.
They are one of the big landowners.
That would be great. That would be great. Thank you, sir.
Other questions on that project? Terry, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. All right, our next presenter also is here at the table with us with an update on Rappahannock Roundtable. Friends of Rappahannock, Brett. Thank you. Okay. Ellen, get you set up here.
Thanks, Senator and members of the commission. Glad to be here today to support you all in the way I can. Once again, my name is Brian Hunsinger. I'm with Friends of the Rappahannock. I'm here to tell you a little bit more about the Rappahannock River Roundtable, which we had a presentation at the September meeting, giving a little bit more information on that. It is a partnership of federal, state, and local agencies, municipalities, nonprofits, schools, universities, businesses, and communities, which all have an interest in land and water conservation in the Rappahannock River watershed, even those counties that are in those categories. Roundtable also supports partners. Many things we have discussed today, including financial incentives, technical assistance, we discussed grant writing, best management practice, project planning, design, installation, monitoring, maintenance, regional advocacy efforts, contracting, and more. A few things that we've been up to over the last year, over $40,000 invested in oyster reef restoration in the northern neck and middle peninsula, working with local seafood companies, watermen, and oyster farmers for aquaculture and for wild fishery. $120,000 has been invested to support stormwater management programs with municipal partners and grants. One of our big focuses for Friends of Rappahannock has been working community tree giveaway programs and tree planting with Virginia Department of Forestry. We're very thankful for that partnership and we're looking forward to continue that, as well as the tracking app that we're working on to ensure that those trees are actually getting in the ground so they get the proper credit. We've worked in 8 counties on that program, over 6,000 trees, including 500 in Lancaster County. Many of you might know about the large tornado that went through there a few months ago, so we were able to get out some trees to replace some of those. If you have not gone down there to see the devastation, is quite a sight to behold. We've also worked with 0% interest loan program to support agricultural best management program implementation. Ongoing promotion and support for the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, or what is VCAP. I just so happen that Caroline County is the home to the award-winning project for VCAP that was named in the Hanover Caroline Stormwater Conservation District. That was just named today, so that's a large tree planting project. We've been working with local businesses, concerned citizens, city and county staff, and other partners. We are going to be launching basically it's we're calling it a River Safety Ambassador Program. As many of you know, if you were anywhere near a river or any water body or outside due to COVID this past year, our public access points, our parks have seen visitation beyond anything that has been seen in the past, which is a very good thing, but also has its impacts. So we will be launching a River Safety Ambassador Program in response to recent drownings and increased use of river and outdoor recreation. So we just received $25,000 in that effort that will begin, planning will begin now and will really go into effect in May. Once we begin, we will begin a lot of outreach with our partners, especially getting the credit Those currently, we are working, Friends of the Rappahannock, is working with the Essex County Conservation Alliance in Smith, Virginia, on what we've already, discussed is, the state scenic river designation. Last night, and Kingsville County passed a resolution, to, support that effort. We are hoping to work with the remaining counties and municipalities, in the month of December, to get those resolutions to pass, and so that, all the goals, also take care of that bill in the future. So thank you all very much on that. We look forward to it. Next year coming up, we mentioned the River Ambassador Program. We hope to offer more, financial incentives for local shorelines. We're going to increase our regional coastal reef restoration efforts, increase reforestation efforts, in increasing our tree giveaways. Please let us know if you would like us to partner with you and you want to reach areas we have not worked with this fall, and as well as go back to the localities that we've already worked with, as areas and then we will continue to support the local all projects that are going forward. There's one that is happening in Mountain Run watershed called County Frontage. There's some fairly innovative modeling that's going on to more efficient spend of money to deal with some bacteria issue in Mountain Run. We also increase public access in Rappahannock watersheds, and finally, we can invest over $1 million. That's all I have, so thank you all very much. We're very thankful.
Okay, excellent update, Grant, thank you. Are there questions for Grant? This presentation. Anybody? Okay, all right. Before we go any further, I should have, when Terry made his presentation on the partnership, the landscape partnership, it would be helpful if the commission here would lend its support to that.
Already have, sir. We have a letter of support from.
We did that already?
So the letter we did, a year ago is sufficient.
Okay. I don't need an update on that.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
If we get back the pre-application saying that we better have more updated information, we can certainly
Okay.
inquire here.
Okay, I think the commission would be amenable to that if necessary, but as was indicated, we do that.
That's why I was asking. We was seeing it a while back, and I didn't know whether that was.
Yeah, all the content is still relevant. The reason why it had been a year was because there was not a designation RFP last year. So we were prepared to move forward last year. When there wasn't a request for proposals provided, then we took that opportunity to kind of retweak and recast a little bit of what we were going after, which has led to the new proposal of going for one large sentinel landscape with 4 installations, 2 different unique approaches. Allowed us to fine tune it a little bit and strengthen our application position. Partnership is I think in pretty good shape, but if we need an updated letter, we will certainly have it. Thank you for that. We appreciate it.
Okay. Also, backing up again, Delegate Cole is carrying the legislation for the city river designation. I thought it'd be appropriate for all of us that are interested, that are members, those of you online there, sign on the paper to that. So, Delegate Cole, you okay with that or something? Let's push that along, sign on. Some of us might be hindered if we sign on. I think you'll be all right. Okay. All right, we'll see if we can do that. It's already been drafted.
We're waiting for the final decision. I'll be great.
Okay, yeah, we all can circulate that, and then we'll get the letter, we can get all of that stuff.
Yes, sir. We very much appreciate it.
Okay, good. We'll try to do that. All right, we've got a couple more agenda items, Eldon, I'll turn that over to you if you want to talk about future meetings and potential agenda items.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
only hit each jurisdiction once every 5 years. And the 2020 cycle was Fredericksburg, Richmond County, Madison County, and then of course back here. Obviously, none of that happened. So we're just pushing it back. And if we're fortunate enough, as Councilman Withers mentioned early on in the meeting, if we're fortunate enough to be able to meet in person in March, we will be in Fredericksburg. If not, it will be some type of arrangement like this, or totally virtually like we had to do last week. And then back to Richmond County. We'll reach back out to Lynn Graves at Graves Mountain Lodge, see if we can get to Graves Mountain Lodge next September and back here in December. And hopefully we can be in more normal setting than this arms apart approach that we use now. I have not identified specific agenda items for the March meeting. I would hope that we would be able to celebrate the approval of the scenic river designation and hope that it is looked on favorably by the governor once the assembly is active. And I'd be more than happy to entertain some suggestions for March or other meetings next year. Okay, thank you, Alan. Anybody have any ideas now you want to put on the radar? Okay, we'll certainly be communicating back and forth between now and then. And members, of course, come up will be engaged in positions one way or the other. Once of these issues clean now and of course working with elders, always around somewhere. So we'll be able to coordinate. Are there any action items? Sometimes in our December meeting, we're kind of queuing up legislation. I don't recall, other than the city river designations, that we have some specific pieces of legislation that we're queuing up for this year. Is that correct, El?
The commission does not, but Faulkner County has a bill drafting request and we have to finalize the patron. We've been working with Delegate Weber, Delegate Guzman, and Senator Bowe. Faulkner County has discovered in their process of working to get the healthy watershed forest sequestration off the ground, they found an impediment, a legislative impediment, to getting contracts executed with the potential aggregator broker, and it's a FOIA issue. For the private entity to enter into contractual arrangements with private landowners and to involve the county in those would mean that those otherwise private contracts would be public documents. This is the same problem that the solar industry had. And in 2017, the legislature almost unanimously passed an exemption, Senator Edwards carried the bill, that provided some protection for proprietary trade secret information within contracts to be held back and protected from release. Not for that issue, there would be contracts underway in the Faulkner area, but the broker had to step back because of that issue. So it really only takes a 3-word amendment to exemption number 29 within the FOIA statute that was passed in 2017 for the solar industry under pretty much exactly the same set of circumstances. And so that piece of legislation, although it's not a river basin commission, it's important to a project that we've worked on for 5 years.
Sure.
Okay. And it is the one legislative item that Faulkner County has asked their delegation to consider. So
bill drafting requests are in, specific patron hadn't been settled for exactly the bill limit issues that you raised earlier. Okay? Also, similar issues there that were resolved with the resource management plan, I believe, a long time ago, before that management time to notice. So, yeah. All right, well, the chair, along those lines, the chair would entertain a motion that we endorse legislation that will take care of that, as far as that FOIA exemption. Is that the motion? This is where somebody says, I move that.
I'll move that we support the future request for it.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Motion properly supported, discussion, any discussion? We're always pretty, hesitant, if you will, to amend the FOIA sections, obviously, we have done that all, but there are instances where you have public-private entities involved where they cannot move forward, if things happen with private information like that, that's sensitive companies as well. That's basically, you set that precedent for at least two different examples that I know of. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those of you on the screen, if anybody's opposed to this, raise your hand right now. Okay, I think we're good. All right, that motion was passed. Okay. Anything else that any member here has to bring up today? Anyone participating as part of the public that wants to go back now, and has a question or comment? Hearing none, Elvin, is there anything else that we need to bring up today? No, sir. Okay. All right, I would thank everyone, those in attendance certainly here today. We had the privilege of enjoying a very nice sandwich. And for those of you that participated virtually, we thank you. And I declare the meeting adjourned.
Billy, I'll bring you your lunch.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, how do you get your?
Yes.
Where do you go to get your survey? Where do you
I
go?
think Eldon's going to be emailing it out to everyone, right?
Thank you. I love your college, by the way.
Thank you.
My grandson just applied to them. So,
All fingers crossed. Good taste. Thank you.
Thank you so much, I appreciate that.